all started after Yeshua and his disciples parted from the Passover Seder. Later we find him in the garden, a place located near the Mount of Olives called Gethsemane, to get alone with God in a peaceful vicinity. With intensity he hit his knees and prayed to the Lord. He was for sure the suffering that he would endure. While his disciples laid and slept, he prayed till sweat started mixing with blood from psychological stress. Skeptics suggest vessels exploding seems kinda bogus. Many don't know it's medically termed as hematidrosis, a gradual effect. It made fragile his flesh, it made his physique weak even before he was beat. Arrested and questioned, we find him in the synagogue, sequestered to stand trial before the rabbinic law of the Sanhedrin, where they did stampede him and spit and strike him with their fists. His head beaten, the jolting of his brain caused a minor concussion, which resulted in temporary loss of brain function. Others slapped him while they asked him, prophesy, who hit you? Bruising his already weakened skin tissue. They sought the death penalty. The Pharisees were in no position to act on this decision. They needed Rome's permission. Now the race is on. The second trial is taking long. As he stood before Pilate silent, it's now the break of dawn. Yeah.
Listen, he was a victim of crucifixion, the most horrendous Roman invention. The infliction of pain that the victim sustained, we will explain using medical diction. Far from Michelangelo's depiction, he was brutally marred beyond recognition. His anatomy had to be scarred for redemption. This is the Crucifixion Description.
From Pilate they sent him to Herod's jurisdiction. Then they sent him back to Pilate for the final conviction. To appease them, he had him beaten and flogged.
From a medical perspective, tell us what was involved.
Astonishing, unbelievable form of punishment. Its intent was meant to extract maximum suffering. They used a whip that consisted of 9 leather thongs and metal bars that would tear into the man involved. With every lash given it left his muscles and his veins exposed, underneath hanging ribbons of flesh. Of 39 strikes they weren't supposed to go over. Sometimes they did, depending on the mood of the soldier. Exposure from his shoulders to the back of his legs. Most victims at this point would start passing away. Needless to say, his blood pressure is starting to drop. His kidneys have stopped, his anatomy's going through shock. Bodily fluids he's losing through the cuts and contusions. His blood volume is reducing while he becomes disillusioned. Hard to believe he still be living. Critical was his condition way before the nails were even driven. A bushel of thorns were found and formed into a crown, which was placed above his face, then shoved down. They mocked Hell, king of the Jews, and started to laugh. They gave him a stab, placed a rope made of wool on his back.
Listen, he was a victim of crucifixion, the most horrendous Roman invention. The infliction of pain that the victim sustained, we will explain using medical diction. Far from Michelangelo's depiction, he was brutally marred beyond recognition. His anatomy had to be scarred for redemption. This is the Crucifixion Description.
Pilate gathers the masses and asks if they should kill Barabbas or Jesus of Nazareth. Allow the crowd all agrees, set Barabbas the murderer free. Crucifixion was what Yeshua was soon to receive. He hauled the crossbar for over 100 yards, fatigued and scarred, destination the place of the skull. The weight of the log is making him fall, so they seized the man from Cyrene that made him take up the cross. An angry mob has pulled the beard from his jaw, vision blurred, speech slurred. The victim is starting to crawl. Reaching the end, he's put on his back, the soldiers have him pinned. Infection is setting into his skin. From this condition, his hands are laid in an outstretched position, while spikes 7 inches are being driven where the wrist is. He is then lifted, attached to the vertical beam, which is put in the ground permanently. No words in the language could explain this anguish. By his wrist he's hanging, his legs dangling. His feet are then placed together, one on top of the other. The third nail is knocked in, leaving him locked in. The weight of his body is dropping, making it impossible for him to live to get any oxygen. Unbelievable sight, seeing him hanging high. He was hard to recognize, like Isaiah prophesied. Massive wounds to his back, a spear wound to his chest. He took his last breath and died due to cardiac arrest.
Listen, he was a victim of crucifixion, the most horrendous Roman invention. The infliction of pain the victim sustained, we will explain using medical diction. Far from Michelangelo's depiction, he was brutally marred beyond recognition. His anatomy had to be scarred for redemption. This is the Crucifixion Description.